So today I'm going to show you how I dehydrate fresh raw celery. This box is 11 inches tall. It has 4 rows of celery, 3 celery in each bag, so there's 36 heads of celery in here. I bought this at a restaurant supply store for $40. So I'll go ahead and open it. It comes in a waxed box, which sometimes it's good to keep those because you can put other things in it. So here's the celery, and again each one has 1, 2, and 3 in each bag. So I'm going to take these out and I'm going to start cutting them, and I'll show you the next step. But in the meantime, I wanted to show you the mushrooms that I bought. And this is the beauty of dehydrating. These are 10-pound boxes of mushrooms. They were $26 per box, so a lot cheaper than if you were to buy it at the store. And these were whole mushrooms, medium sized, so I quartered them and I dehydrated them. If I sliced them, I would have gotten more per jar, but by quartering them, it fills up a little more extra space. So I wanted to show you. These are the finished jars right here. There's 3 half-gallons, so 1.5 gallons total is what I got out of 20 pounds of mushrooms. So dehydrating really does save space. It saves your jars. It gives you a lot of food to have shelf stable. And I wanted to show you what they looked like when they were completely dry. So this is what we have. These are little quarter pieces. So putting them in warm water and letting them sit for up to an hour, they will reconstitute, rehydrate right back up to almost their complete full size, being fresh. You can hear they're kind of crisp. So you can grind these. You can hear it. You can grind these up into a powder to add to foods. Mushrooms are very high in protein, so I always store a lot of mushrooms. And dehydrating is the absolute best way because you can use them in anything. Canned mushrooms, you can only get so many of the full-size mushrooms in a jar, and then you fill it up with water. This way you can get a lot of mushrooms in a jar, and they just sit there ready for you to use. Canned mushrooms can get pretty mushy. These will still have a slight chew to them, so they're not like mush. Alright, so here's 1 stalk of celery. It was absolutely beautiful and perfect when I got it home from the restaurant supply store, but it sat around for about 6 days because I was canning meat, canning beets, and dehydrating bell peppers, onions, and mushrooms. So now I'm finally getting to the celery, so it's a little bit on the yellow side. So you're going to trim off whatever you can that doesn't look healthy, and I give it to my chickens. And because every celery stalk that I buy from the store, every celery head, I cut off, leaving about 3 inches so that I can plant these. I did a video on this earlier. I'm going to plant my celery all around my house. I have celery beds already established, but now I'm going to branch out because celery is a staple in most cooking. It also provides a lot of nutrition with vitamins and minerals. So I'm just going to cut. Yes, I'm losing out, probably this much of the celery that I could be using. But when you plant it in the ground, this little center here starts to shoot up and it produces more stalks. These end up dying off, but in the meantime it helps hold this up until the center becomes wider and thicker and has stalks in it. You could put this, if you're not going to plant it for a week or so, you could put this bottom part inside a very shallow pan with some water, and it will start rooting on you. All around here you'll see the roots start. So this is how you get your own celery started without having to go through the whole process of planting seeds and waiting almost a year for it to get big enough. You just plant these. Okay, so next thing I do is I open these up and I take all the leafy part out. This has the most flavor out of the entire celery stalk. So I'm just going to tear those off. Take that off. And these I do dry. I'll show you later. This is excellent for putting in soups, casseroles, anything to boost up the flavor and the nutrition. So never throw your leaves away. You can use them fresh or you can put them in the dehydrator. So this one is a little too yellow for me. So I'm just going to cut it off here and give it to the chickens. And probably this one too. I have plenty. Normally I would probably save, this much and I would make a soup base out of it, but my chickens are going to be happy today and they'll give me eggs. So it works out. Another leaf. This one's kind of rough, so I'll put that over there. Alright, my leaves are going to go onto the side. Now I have all of my celery. I'm going to go rinse it real quick in the sink and I'll be right back. Alright, so I have my celery washed. And generally I just start with one at a time and I cut the tops off. Now the tops are good for like just boiling and making broth out of. There's nothing wrong with it, it just doesn't look good. If somebody were to get that in soup they'd go, ew! But if you boil it and you get all the nutrition out of it and the flavor, then it's still good to go. So I save that. And I'll cut this off and the top off. This one I will deal with a little bit differently, and the same for this one. Because they're so small, I generally don't like cut them down the middle, so I like to do these separate. Then I have these two left. So you'll notice that some of these have little bits of scars on them, and this is fine to eat. However, when you have something it's actually soft, this is soft here. So I'm just going to kind of peel that off a little bit. And peel that off a little bit. And it's still good to use. No reason to throw everything out just because it has a little mark on it. This one obviously has been broken, it's been crushed. So this one is going to go into the pot for making broth with. It's still good, it just doesn't look good. Same here. And if you want, you can actually put all of your onions, your celery, any kind of vegetables that you want to make broth with into a gallon-sized Ziploc bag and freeze it. And then when you have a chance later, or you're going to make soup, you bring it out and you boil it until you get a nice broth. Discard all the solids and you have a vegetable broth for free. And these all look pretty good. That one has a small amount, so I'll just trim that off. This all goes to my chickens. Okay, the next step, I like them, I don't want to have a huge piece like this. I can dehydrate it like this, so if your family likes to have huge pieces of celery, go for it. I generally cut it down the middle, and then sometimes if it's a really big piece, I'll do fourths, all like that. So this one is just going to get a half. So I'm going to start here. And just go down the middle. And this one too, all of them are going to get halved. This one, let me see if I can show you on this one. If you hold your knife like this, you have the ability to actually like draw with it. With the camera angle it's a little bit hard, but I'm going to try it. You can just, you're drawing, you're telling the knife where to go, see, based on how you're moving your knife. So you can easily cut around spots that you don't like. If you wanted to make something fancy, you know, with another vegetable, you could do that as well. And I can usually do pretty straight lines because I'm telling it to go straight. So now I'm just going to get all of these, bang them all so they're all together. Scooch them up a little bit. So as I go down, this is going to start filling up with the cut ends, and I'm just going to keep going down. If I do this in the middle, so avoid this. Don't do it in the middle because you'll have a bunch here and you're going to end up with no room here. So here we go. And I do all of them at the same time. Also, make sure when you go to the end, make sure you're hitting the bottom and coming through, or all of the webbing in here, these little things here that hold the celery together. It will hold the celery together. You will not cut through them all, and then they'll get dehydrated and they'll still be stuck together. So make sure you go all the way through, and you can feel the bottom of your cutting board. And you can make them as thick or as thin as you want. This is what we usually have. You can use old celery too. If it's rubbery, go for it, because you know, if it's in the bottom of your fridge, you no need to throw it away. Just start doing the same thing. Old celery actually is sweeter and more flavorful. It's concentrated its juices, so don't throw it away. Use it. Alright, so these are the ends that I've cut off. When you go into the celery itself, you end up with like a little knot here, and this is where the leaf comes out, and I cut them right here so I have these nice long generous stalks. But then you also have this top part, and I know a lot of people just throw that away. I don't, because again, it's food. It's free food if you're willing to use it. And so here I have a lot of those that are already done. There's nothing wrong with eating this part of it. It's perfectly good. If for some reason now you're freaked out by it, your kids don't like it, just cut it off. And then you have basically, I'm going to cut the top end off and the bottom end off if you don't want to use that. Then you basically have a piece of celery that you can use. So what I do is, you can tell the end hasn't been cut off on these. And my fingers are stained from canning beets and dehydrating beets. I'll show that in a minute. So, you know, I just cut off all of the tops so they're nice and fresh. Like here's some more. And I'll just cut those off to nice, healthy, fresh, crisp ends. And they are all done. And then I just line them all up here. Pile them up, and then I just cut them. And I have, I'll show you how much celery you get out of this. These are the parts that sometimes I will eat with peanut butter. I'll get a little bowl of peanut butter and I will take the stalks and I'll dip it in there and I'll eat it. It's not like I can put the peanut butter on it because there's no little boat area inside the celery to hold it in place. And so by dipping it in the peanut butter, I'm getting the same thing, and I'm eating the inside part of the celery. Alright, and there was this piece I wanted to recut. Okay, and sometimes when you're doing this, you'll see that there's little parts in here that when you start to cut, it exposes like little bad areas. So I'm going to pick those out, give those to my chickens. They'll be very happy about that. Okay, so here's all this celery right here that would have been thrown away. That's about half a cup. And that was just a couple of the little tops. I have quite a pile to go through. And then over here, these are all the leaves, the tops. Look at all of these leaves. I think we've done maybe 8 celery heads so far, and all of this is going to be dehydrated. It makes amazing flavor for anything, soups, casseroles, whatever you want to put it in. It's really good flavor. So never throw away your celery tops. I don't understand why the store doesn't sell dehydrated celery tops in the spice section, because that's where the flavor is. Okay, so we've done about 10 celery heads, I think 8 or 10. And here's my celery leaves, the part that was on in the inside and on the top. And I'm going to put these into the dehydrator. So when we do this, you have the opportunity of having a single sheet of mesh, and you can see the tiny little holes here. Sometimes food gets so small when it's dehydrated, it goes through those little tiny holes. So what you can do is take another sheet and go the opposite way. So the holes, they're rectangle, they go up and down. This sheet is going to go sideways. And when you do that, you have a double mesh layer and very few things can fall through there. So this is what I do if I don't have silicone mats ready for the leaves, because when the leaves are completely dry, they turn into like these crispy little, I don't even know what you call them. They just float around. They get full of static. So I'm going to hinge my shelf here and I'm going to put my leaves up first. Actually, I will go down one more because I'm going to make this layer very high so I can get as much on as possible. And again, in my previous videos I've explained I don't mess around with putting everything separate like that. I pile it on because I don't have time to be kind of fritzy and prissy and wanting it all done nice and neat and perfect. It turns out just fine when you layer it on like this. It dehydrates. There's enough air to get through all of these, believe it or not. And they all dry really well. So I have a nice thick layer. It is probably 2 going on 3 inches high. And I will just slide those in. I do have room in the back, so when I come back with more tops, I will put them back there. But they just slide in there like that. And here I have another double mesh because I'm going to do celery, and some of the little pieces may actually dehydrate enough to fall through. I don't want to lose any, so I'm just going to double mesh it. And again, I pile it on, and I will show you when I take it out just how small and low this gets. Okay. I load it up to the point where the shelves almost look like they're going to break. Along the front. Alright, now I'm going to turn it around and put it in the back, so the back part that's partially empty I can fill up. I try to get as much food through the dehydrator as I possibly can so I can get as much done quickly, and then I start on the next batch. This is the way to do it. Alright, this is one shelf. It's about 2 inches high. And this is what's left out of that bowl. Not a whole lot. So I'll put that on the next shelf. Alright, so it's completely dehydrated, and if we can get the shot just right, you can actually see there's very little height to it. This was all the way up to the top. Celery is almost 100% water, so when I pull it out, that huge piled up mounded amount of celery that was almost breaking the shelf is now reduced down to this. It's completely dry, and I mean, it's, you know, you don't need very much when it's this small in any kind of food that you're making. So I'll go ahead and put this in jars in a minute. I wanted to show you, these are the tops of the celery, the inside part and the tops, and you can hear it. It's completely dry, and all I do put it in a jar, and then when I'm going to use it in soup or a casserole or something, I use it like parsley. But it's celery, and it has a lot more nutrition in it, more vitamins in it than parsley would. It also has a flavor, so it adds the celery flavor. Celery is also, like I said before, really good at preserving meat. So all of this could be ground up into a powder, just like the little pieces of celery that I dehydrated, and you add it to salt, and you use that as a curing salt for meat. Here's the finished celery. This is 36 large heads of celery right here. It made 1/2 gallon and 1 pint, completely full up to the top. So you would only need 1/4 cup to use for a recipe for using. It also made a full quart of the leaves and the little tiny stalk parts that the leaves are attached to. I just dry those too. And this again you use for flavoring, and it's sort of like putting parsley or cilantro inside. I also wanted to show you the jar lid. It's not the traditional canning jar lid. This is Classico spaghetti sauce. They are mason jars, so you can reuse the jars and use them for canning. But any jar that you have that has a rubber ring around the inside like this, you can use like a canning jar. It's air and moisture proof, so I use those all the time. And I can save my lids and rings for canning. So I'm going to go ahead and get some warm water, and I'm going to show you how to reconstitute the celery. In the meantime, my dehydrator is going to get started up again because I have kale going from the store. I will do the same thing as the celery leaves and just stick it into whatever I'm making. And then on the other side, we have sourdough bread rising over here. So you can use your dehydrators to proof bread, make yogurt. It can be used for a lot of different things other than drying food. Alright, so here's the celery after it's been sitting for probably 30 minutes. This is before, little teeny tiny pieces. This is after. And as this cooks in your soup, or if you want to add it to casseroles or something, it will swell up even more. It's almost full size at this point. And then over here we have the leaves. This is a dried leaf, and these, it's a little hard to see them because when I pulled it up they all kind of stuck together. But these are the leaves, and within like 5 minutes they were already soft and ready to go. So this is a very easy way to keep a supply of celery on hand and use it in any kind of food that you want. You can also grind it up as a powder and add it to your food, or like I said before, add it to salt and use it to help cure meat as a curing salt. You would have to do more research on that, and maybe at some point I'll do a video on that, but right now I just wanted to cover the basics of the celery. So if you like this, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want more of what I do, and I would definitely suggest you give this a try. And always try and reconstitute anything that's somewhat thick. The leaves obviously would be something you could just toss into soup, but the celery you would definitely want to reconstitute it, at least partially like I did here, before adding it to salt and oil in your soups. Thanks for watching. So I'm going to show you how to reconstitute